Hey, Commonwealth Nation, welcome to the Inside Track. My name's Chase Chamberlain. I'm the founder and CEO of Commonwealth. We put these sessions together to get you guys closer than ever to the action, to the stories, and to the teams behind these offerings. Today, it's all about Italian Soirée and her trainer, Graham Motion. Excited to give you guys some insights from Graham, some background on this filly, and a closer look into the plans that the issuer and the training team have for this filly looking ahead at 2026. So let's jump right in. I don't want to waste any time. We're going to talk about Italian Soirée before we welcome Graham Motion to the show. So Italian Soirée is an incredibly well-bred daughter of Uncle Mo, who is not only a super sire, but a super broodmare sire, meaning his daughters have gone on to produce absolutely fantastic racehorses, horses like Journalism and Torpedo Anna. And, he's really only just begun. This filly has impressed from the very beginning. She was purchased for $600,000 at the OBS March sale after working a sharp furlong. And she won her debut impressively at Aqueduct by 5 1/4 lengths. She's progressed into stakes company very well, scoring in the Coronation Cup, grade 3, and has improved her record to 10 starts. This filly has run against some of the best fillies in the country, one of those being Nitrogen. And like Nitrogen, has shown herself to be successful both on dirt and turf. She was also second in the grade 3 Adirondack at Saratoga in her second race at 2, fourth in the grade 1 Natalma, where she was bested by Nitrogen and some other top fillies. And, the thing that's very exciting about this filly is not only is there an opportunity to jump straight into the highest level of racing, but beyond the racetrack, Italian Soirée carries outstanding residual value as a broodmare prospect. She already received a $900,000 bid at the Fasig-Tipton November breeding stock sale. The ownership group decided not to sell her, believing that there's still more upside to be gained. She's got plenty of racing left in her, and they needed to buy out another partner. So, again, she's by leading sire Uncle Mo out of Social Call, the dam of stakes performers, including Italian Soirée's full brother, Be Better. She has that attractive race record already that kind of creates a floor for where her value will go. So in some ways, she's de-risked. And we still believe, the issuer still believes, that there's plenty of upside to go. Where she's moving to Graham Motion, or has been moved to Graham Motion, to pursue that illustrious grade 1, grade 2 victory. And Graham has a special knack for helping fillies not only step up in company, but in creating longevity. We're going to talk more about what it is in Graham's program that makes that possible. But this is a very special filly. Not only does she have a strong kind of early pedigree, later in the pedigree, you may know she's actually comes from the family of Scat Daddy. Scat Daddy, who had an untimely death, I think at 11 years old, is the sire of Triple Crown winner Justify. He also went on to produce horses like No Nay Never and so many others, Caravaggio. When Scat Daddy died, the year that Justify won the Kentucky Derby, he had 3 entrants in the Derby alone, which is absolutely unbelievable. And this is just at 11 years old. So huge mark to come from, on the bottom side, the female family, come from the actual family of Scat Daddy. Well, as I mentioned before, we're very excited to welcome Graham Motion to the Inside Track today. And very few trainers in modern American racing combine patience, global perspective, and elite results the way that Graham Motion does. He was born in Cambridge, England, and raised in a family steeped in bloodstock. Graham began his racing career early before relocating to the United States in 1980. After formative assistant roles under Jonathan Shepard and later Bernie Bond, Graham took out his trainer's license in the early 90s and immediately proved he belonged right where he was at. His first independent win came with Bounding Daisy at Laurel Park in 93, and that trajectory really never slowed. He announced himself on the world stage in 2004 when Better Talk Now stormed home to win the Breeders' Cup Turf, his first grade 1 victory and a really defining moment for his program. 7 years later, Graham reached Racing Summit, saddling Animal Kingdom to victory in the Kentucky Derby before the colt went on to add the Dubai World Cup in 2013. A couple fun facts that people don't realize about Graham is that was Animal Kingdom's first dirt race ever. And he actually had survived a very serious fracture. Graham rehabbed him, brought him back, and then went on to win the Dubai World Cup. What separates Graham from the rest of the crowd is not just in the headline wins, but I would also say in the consistency behind them and the way that he does it. From Fairhill, Maryland, a gorgeous, idyllic setting, he's built a reputation for developing horses deliberately and patiently, and often thrives with fillies and turf runners over these extended campaigns. His resume includes 14 Grade 1 winners, international success at Ascot with sharing, and elite performances across North America and abroad. And the excellence continues today. Graham had a massive Pegasus World Cup weekend, running first and second in the $1 million Pegasus World Cup turf, with test score on top and one stripe close behind, a result that vaulted him to number 6 in North American trainer earnings in 2026 from a pretty limited barn. With more than 165 million in career earnings, nearly 2,900 wins, and a proven ability to deliver at the sport's highest level, Graham remains one of the most trusted hands in racing, quietly elite, globally respected, still winning, and just a fantastic horseman, person, and lover of horses more than anything. Very excited to welcome Graham Motion to the show. All right. Well, Graham, thanks so much for joining us. It's great to have you.
Good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and as I mentioned, Commonwealth and Graham go way back when we were just a fledgling company, really without an app. We had a $15,000 horse that Moret helped us find at Keeneland, and it was funny. Joel Turner, who was the attorney, said, "Okay, you guys are going to Graham. You're going to be in great shape." And he told me something that's always stuck with me, Graham. He said, he goes, "I'm going to give you some handicapping advice." He said, "Never sleep on a Graham Motion horse that has long odds." And by God, I think I've won more money handicapping doing that than any other thing.
That's funny. That's kind of something, I honestly, following guys like Wayne Lucas, you realize you got to take shots in these big races, and you got to have the confidence to do it. And I learned from those guys.
Well, speaking of big races, you had a heck of a weekend. Let's quick talk about this Pegasus World Cup turf test score in one stripe going 1-2. And Graham, well, we can start with test score, but one stripe who went second. You just took over for Appleby, and this is what, your second race with the horse?
Yeah, so actually we ran him in the Breeders' Cup. He won a win and you're in South Africa. And his first start over here was just okay. And the Breeders' Cup was kind of a disaster. He broke on the lead and had never been on the lead before. And of course, being the Breeders' Cup, they went very fast. So we regrouped. He won an allowance race down here in Gulfstream, and then put up a huge performance the other day. I think he's going to be a really nice horse.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'll say it's not bad. Okay, so fine. Your third race, and you got him a second in a grade one. We'll take that all day
Yeah,
long.
absolutely. Yeah, we had a big contingent here from South Africa. They take a lot of pride in these horses that come over here.
Well, we're super excited to be in the barn. I think that's one of the kind of hallmarks of your stable that I've been able to watch, and experience over the years. Of course, all jokes aside, we had Biko, and that really taught me a lot about your program. And as a horseman, really helped me appreciate all that you and Alice and Kat and Ian and the entire team put into making sure that these horses, are just happy, healthy, safe. And, I think that's why it's perfect. We experienced this with bipartisanship and now having Italian Soirée, coming into the program. Let's talk a little bit about your success with fillies, Graham. What do you think it is? Why do you think fillies thrive so much in your program?
I don't think it's a coincidence. Look, Jonathan Shepherd, who was my teacher, really, my first teacher, my college, if you like, this is what he did. This was his thing. He thrived with top grass fillies, and I think it's about exactly what you said, keeping them happy, keeping them relaxed. We turn out horses a lot at Fairhill, and that was something that Jonathan really believed in. He used to turn a lot of fillies out together, which I cannot do. It's too it's too risky for me. We turn them out separately, but it's all about keeping them relaxed. And he did really well with some really top grass fillies.
And so what does that look like, for you? How do you, because I think easier said than done. It's like, okay, great. It's a great thought to keep these horses relaxed, but how do you keep them relaxed and happy?
I think, look, the first thing is turnout. I think it's hugely important. It was something that wasn't done that much when I first came around to the racetrack. With Jonathan Shepherd's, obviously we could do it on the farm. But that's a big key. I think the way we breeze them, we don't breeze fast. Anyone that's had horses with me, we don't breeze horses fast. We want them to enjoy it. We want them to finish up a work strong. We want them to feel good about it. I don't want them to dread going out there and breezing. I want them to enjoy it. And I tell you, there's something really cool about generous fillies. Colts, there's some remarkable colts. Tesco's a great example. I mean, he's a tough guy, but when you have a filly that's really just tough and so generous in the afternoon, there's something really special about that.
Yeah, I've always made the joke that if we still went to war and rode horses, I would almost certainly pick a mare because a stallion he might be tough, but who knows if he'll use the thinking side of his
Yeah,
brain. A gelding
yeah,
would close his eyes and run you through the ditches, but
yeah.
a good mare, I mean, you could take her to battle.
Yeah, she'll look after you. I mean, our first really top mare, I guess, was Filmmaker. She just got beat in the Breeders' Cup, my first year ever running in the Breeders' Cup, and I think it kind of grew from there. Look, I'm not afraid to say it. I get tremendous satisfaction out of training these really nice fillies.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it seems to be working, and I think not only are you great at campaigning these fillies, you're also incredible at longevity, creating these campaigns on these horses that last a long time. What is it about that?
I think it comes down to probably the way we breeze them. We're just not that hard on them in the morning. Horses on the grass do not have to be as fit as dirt horses, if you like. The turf is very firm most of the time, certainly in the summer. It's very flat. It's not like Europe where you're going up and downhill. So you can get away with a lot of fitness. The dirt can be very deep. It's like sand. If you're running on the beach, it's much harder than running over a firm turf course. So I think we can get away with doing a little less, and I think that's what keeps them around longer.
Yeah, well, it certainly has proved out, in all the horses, so many of the horses that you've managed. So we're talking Italian Soirée today, an Uncle Mo filly that you obviously know her past, and the real hope is that you can kind of you and your team can work your magic on, hopefully getting her to stretch out and kind of step up in company a little bit. What does that kind of look like, generally speaking? What's the process of trying to get one to start to stretch out for people that just have no clue?
Well, I think first of all, it's great that she's had a little break. She's had a freshening. She started back with some of my grass fillies at Fair Hill, and I think hopefully the attitude in training, getting away from the racetrack, training at Fair Hill, and all the things that I've already said, I think hopefully that will enable her to settle and maybe stretch out her races a little bit so that she can get up to a mile. That would obviously be the goal.
Yeah. Yeah, she sure seems to have the physicality, the pedigree is there. And she doesn't seem, she hasn't seemed rank to me. She just seems like she's hurried a bit.
Sure, and it may well be that she is just a sprinter, and that would just be fine. But obviously, if she can stretch out, it opens up the door to a lot more races.
Yeah, well, I think if there's anybody, that's why I was so excited to jump on this opportunity. If there's a man for the job, it's definitely you. So I want to just quick talk, and then we're going to jump into some just straight up Q&A. Some people have submitted some questions, and I'm excited to hear your responses. But I think another thing that is kind of a hallmark of your program is that you, Jane, Alice, the Herringswell team do such a great job picking spots. And, like you said, kind of following the lead of Dwayne and others, you're not afraid to enter a horse in a big race. But what do you think contributes to your success and your willingness to haul? Because it's not just you're not just willing to throw horses on vans. You're so considerate about the horses. So why are you guys particularly good at that?
I mean, I think it probably stems again from Jonathan's. We trained mostly on the farm in Pennsylvania, so every time we raced a horse, we were shipping somewhere, and that's how it is at Fair Hill. We're not restricted to one condition book. I like to pick races for horses, and I'm fortunate that I've had owners that are very supportive about this because the shipping is expensive, so it adds an extra dimension to the racing program. But look, I just don't like to be limited to running in one place. We want to take horses where they belong and where they fit. And Jane Buchanan, obviously, she's my racing manager. She scours the condition books and the overnights. The one thing about how we do it is you have to spend a lot of time looking at condition books because you may have six or seven on the go in the summer, and sometimes the extras come out late at night. So it's almost a full-time job for Jane, keeping an eye on races and then picking stakes. And I love picking stakes in the middle of the summer and kind of backing up and figuring out the best way to get there. I think that's something that we really enjoy. It always amuses me when people say, "Oh, this horse at Grand Motions, he's run at six different tracks in seven starts." I don't think about it. It's just what we do. I think that's what they said about test score this weekend. That's just the way our program works.
Yeah, well, and the key is it does work. So
Yeah, we've definitely had success with it, and I enjoy it. I mean, that's part of the fun of what we do. And look, you got to have good horses. We're very fortunate to have good horses and good owners that support us doing that.
yeah, yeah, amen. Amen. Well, let's jump into some Q&A if you're game for that. We've got some good questions from folks. I think they'll love to kind of hear straight from, well, the horse trainer's mouth anyway.
Makes me a
Um,
little nervous, but
yeah, they're not too bad. I didn't get to ask any questions, so they're all reasonable.
yeah.
Um, so Penny Prue wants to know if Italian Soirée will train at Fairhill and Elkton.
Yeah, absolutely. No, she's at Fair Hill now, and that's where she's going to stay for the time being.
And for those of you that don't know, so I'll never forget my first trip to Graham's. He was kind enough to let me spend the week up at Fairhill, and I'm not the best at following rules, and I do all sorts of things I'm not supposed to do. And it's what is it, Graham, from the barn to the gap? Is it a mile or a half mile?
Yeah, it's probably about a half a mile, I should think.
Okay, and how many sets do you usually send up?
So we'll do six at this time of year and then seven in the summer.
Yeah, so I walked, 14 miles, I think, every day. And by the way, I didn't bring walking shoes. I think I almost tore my Achilles and I needed a new belt by the end of the trip. But it really
Yeah.
was amazing to watch that walk, what it did to horses that maybe came out really fresh or even touch nervous. And by the time they got to the track to train, they had just completely decompressed.
Yeah, I think that's true. I mean, I do think that's a factor of Fair Hill, and then when you pull up from a gallop or a bit of work, you have the long walk home. So I think that really it all helps the mental attitude. I mean, a horse, it takes us 45 minutes to get a set out, a set of horses. Before that, they'll have half an hour of turnout, and after that, they'll have half an hour of walking. So you can do the math. They have a good amount of time outside the stalls, and that all helps the attitude and to keep them relaxed.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Damon Noss, who's from your area, wanted to know what circuit you're kind of thinking for her. Is she, Mid-Atlantic, New York, Kentucky, or is it kind of an open bag given your style?
Yeah, I think it's going to depend a little bit how quickly she gets ready. Obviously, if we're ready in April, Kentucky's going to be the logical place. They'll have the first turf racing. So it's going to depend a little bit on who opens up first on the grass.
Yeah, yeah, that's fair. And to that point, Rob Fargo wanted to know, and I think this Graham would be more of obviously there's some things we need to learn. She's got to kind of get legged up and sort some things out. But do you have any ideas for kind of, target races for the summer? Anything that sticks out if all goes to plan?
Yeah, I really haven't got that far, and that's something you'll learn with me. I don't look that far ahead until we get them started. I think a lot of it's going to depend how quickly she comes to hand.
Sure. Okay. And let's see. I'm going to look for another question. So, as a 4-year-old filly, how do you balance patience for development on the turf with identifying when it's time to be more ambitious with placement?
Yeah, I mean, you'll find with me that I'm not afraid to be ambitious. If she comes out and runs well first time, I'll often take a shot off of that. I think with sprinters, it's well, with her starting in sprints, because that's most likely what we're going to do is we're going to bring her back in a sprint at least to start because we know she can do that. It takes a little bit less fitness. So, a lot's going to depend on her first start, on which direction we go. Do we come back in a sprint? Do we look to stretch her out in a second start? And a lot of that's going to depend on how she runs first time out.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. It's a place that there's a lot of information that comes out of that type of race.
Yeah, and by that time of year, all of a sudden everywhere's opening up, so we have a lot more options.
Yeah. About how long, generally speaking, now that she's had this freshening, what's your kind of general rule of thumb for how long a horse typically should come along?
Yeah, I mean, she's going to need 2 or 3 weeks of just basically jogging, trotting. Some of that's going to be in the shed row with the way the weather is right now. And then she'll have a month of galloping before her first breeze. And then it's going to take at least, with a sprinter, you can get away with a little less, maybe 5 or 6 breezes. So it's going to be the better part of 2.5 months from now before we're even thinking about a race.
Yeah. Which is, the way I always look at what I love about a freshening for a turf horse in the winter is, a lot of the turf is closed down other than down south. And, a lot of our most exciting races are later in the calendar year anyway.
Yeah, the first shot we're going to get to run really is going to be the last couple of weeks of March if the weather cooperates, and really it's going to be April. So we kind of we're on schedule to be ready when the grass starts up.
Yeah. So one person want to know, how do you know when a horse is a winner? What really stands out to you early to suggest these chances?
I mean, that's confusing. I mean, it's a good question because I think, certainly with the unraced horses, you can have horses be incredibly impressive in the morning, and very disappointing in the afternoon, and vice versa. You can have lazy workhorse in the morning that surprise you in the afternoon. But I think once a filly has shown ability like she has, you know it's there. So I don't put so much credence into the breezes in the morning. But they need to show that they need to show some quality in the morning, and some of that is attitude too. It's how they deal with things, because the fastest athlete, it doesn't matter how good they are if they don't handle the pressure of the afternoon in any sport, right? It doesn't matter how good you are.
Yeah. Well, isn't that the truth? I mean, Country Grammar's a great example. Very lazy in the mornings. You really had to ask a lot out of him, and
Mhm.
he was an absolute warrior in the afternoons. He'd fight to the finish every
Yeah,
single time.
yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
and I've had others that were, like to throw off bullet works every single time, and they'd, fold up like a cheap suit in the
Yeah,
afternoon.
yeah, they're the most frustrating ones for sure.
Yeah, yeah, that part's tough. So with these horses how do you generally go about? Is there anything special that you do to move a horse? And I know you've explained some of the just general kind of culture around the barn and the environment you try to create, but what else do you do to try to, work to stretch a horse out?
I think stretch out their works. Certainly with a sprinter, we don't usually breeze much beyond 5/8, but if we're gonna look to stretch her out, we're gonna want to go 5/8 and have a good gallop out in the morning. You're gonna want to see that they can handle that, right?
Hmm.
I think we probably tend to put a little bit more of a base into them, perhaps than some people, just because we're often running horses over distances first time out, which takes a little bit more fitness.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And with that, this is actually a great question from Sean Malloy. He's asked some great questions. What signals, tell you that a horse is ready to move up in class versus stay in kind of a confidence building progression. I think that's especially, true or relevant with fillies.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think you want to discourage them. Everything that I do in the morning, I want them to enjoy it. I want it to give them confidence. I want them to want to go out there. It drives me crazy to see a horse getting hit in the morning. If a horse has to be hit in the morning in a workout, you know, how are they going to feel in the afternoon? It's got to be a worry. So I just want them to feel good and get the best out of them in the morning to encourage them to go on and do things in the afternoon.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it reminds me, it's like I would rather be telling my racehorse to do less than, forcing them to do more. It's like trying to tell your receptionist that they should smile at people and be friendly.
100%. Yeah, you want to leave a little bit on the table for sure.
With Italian Soirée, you've obviously not spent a lot of time with her, but you've seen the filly. What would you say kind of stands out with a filly like this? What makes her kind of attractive? You don't have unlimited stalls. You run a tight program. What made you, eager to bring her in the barn?
Yeah, I mean, obviously her accomplishments already, she's shown some quality, but she looks like she's, physically even grown, filled out some over the winter. So I think the times probably helped her. Horses change from 3 to 4, from 2 to 3. So I think that the best thing that you've done, or you guys have done with her, is to give her a little break to let her catch up a little bit.
Yeah, I've noticed that sometimes these Uncle Mo fillies can be, there's some that can be hard keepers, and when they lose their condition, it really shows up, I feel like, in their racing results.
Yes, no doubt.
They're obviously beautiful, and Uncle Mo speaks for himself. They're not making any more of them, as it turns out. But she looks to me like the horse, a style of horse. Well, obviously this remains to be seen, but she doesn't look physically like a horse that couldn't, at least get to a mile.
No, she
Uh,
has some scope. She definitely has some scope. So
well, fantastic. Well, Graham, we've really cranked through these questions. I think this is great. We know how busy you are. We're so excited to be in the barn. One thing that's great about Graham's program is he's got great staff members. They give amazing updates. He actually spoiled us because they do these great work videos and they send photos. And, you know, I'd move on to other barns after Graham's and I was eagerly waiting for months and videos never came. And I thought, well, I didn't realize we had to beg people for content. So we're really excited to be in the barn. And, it's such an honor to have someone that's not only incredibly gifted, but also really cares deeply about the horses. And um, Graham and his wife both have done a great deal to ensure, all of the horses that are at Herringswell have, safe landing spots after their careers. And so, kudos to you guys, for that as well.
yeah, I mean that's something we feel very strongly about. My wife is very passionate about it. She does a lot of work with the TRF, and it's so important that we find homes for these retired horses, and it's something that we're lucky in our area that there are a lot of ways to make use of horses. A lot of people are looking for hunters and show jumpers, so it's very easy to do, and I think people are much more conscious of it these days. And I think as far as the work videos and such, it's just really important for you guys that you're able to share that information with your partners. So I'm glad that you appreciate that.
Yeah, no, I mean, it really does. It makes all the difference. And this is a game that requires so much patience. And when you know that things are happening, at least it's makes it easier to ride the roller coaster, if you
For
will.
sure. Absolutely. And you can come
And
along with the horse, exactly.
and the beauty of, this Italian soiree, one thing that we did very early on, and I'm very proud that we've committed to, is we do 1% of every offering goes to aftercare. So we've contributed a couple $100,000 to aftercare thus far. And we've been so fortunate. So many of our horses have gone onto the breeding shed that,
Hmm.
it's that money gets to carry a lot of other horses. So glad
Well,
to be partnered
good.
with you in that mission.
Good for you. That's a great program. I wish more people, were as passionate about it. And I think we are. I think as an industry, we're so much more aware of it than we used to be.
Yeah, I think, I think it's good to recognize strides that have been made and to acknowledge that there's more that can be done.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
So, well, Graham, we're like I said, thank you so much for taking time. We know how busy you are. We're excited to be in the barn and can't wait to see what you can do with Italian Soirée.
Great. We look forward to getting into the track.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Graham.
Okay. Thank you, Chase.
All right, what a fantastic session with Graham. Graham, of course, very busy. Wanted to allow him to get back to all that he has to do. He's got appointments this afternoon, so handled most of the questions, but I wanted to quickly go through and make sure that some of the other questions that were asked that we don't really need Graham for, that I quickly address those. And so I was going to go through here really quick and make sure that everything goes through. One of the questions Sean Malloy, David Sanchez both asked is, if Italian Soirée shows meaningful improvement this season, how does that influence longer term plans, both racing and eventual broodmare considerations? If she has a fantastic year, probably the better her year is, the more likely it is that she retires next year as a broodmare. Some of the best breeders in the industry like to get the horses off to stud as early as possible on the backs of that great success because, you know, the idea of striking while the iron is hot kind of applies here. And so, my guess is if we can get that grade one success, especially this year, almost certainly means that we would, probably try and sell her at the broodmare sale, or there is a small chance that we hold on to her and breed her and then sell her the following year. So the offering is built in such a way that we can do that. And I would just say that's something that we need to play by ear. The beautiful thing about Graham and his program, as we mentioned a couple times, is that you really can, hope for that longer term career if we need that because they do such a great job. One thing Graham didn't, kind of dive into and brag enough about is Graham has a very special lameness program that actually has that vet there every week on a certain date. They jog the horses up. She goes over them with a fine tooth comb. And so they're doing, kind of preventative, proactive maintenance on these horses long before issues arise. It also helps them to make sure that they're not training through problems. So just, I think, very special kind of program in that way. John Byrne asked, is there a chance we could see Italian Soirée at Delaware Park? I think absolutely, John. Again, as Graham said, it's tough to say. We're really going to be hunting those larger races, but Graham does great at Delaware Park. We're obviously, right in the area. And, could be a chance that there's something there. I haven't looked perfectly at the race schedule, but I think she'll be very active on the Eastern Seaboard. Some other people asked about Saratoga for the summer. I think there are absolutely races that to be run in Saratoga. We know she loves it there. Graham spends the summer there. And when do you think the next start will be and where? Not sure where we'll start, but I think the start will come, in probably April time. All goes well, kind of knock on wood, touch wood, if you will. I think there's absolutely an opportunity for that. And I think that basically covers most of the questions. Like we said, very excited to have a very special filly that should kind of catapult us straight into those graded stakes types races with an elite pedigree and a resume that already supports, the quality and the talent, and a trainer that believes in the filly, is excited to have her, and has just such a strong track record of being able to move horses up and campaign them long, successful careers. Hope that this was a beneficial session for you guys and that you enjoyed. So excited to welcome you to Italian Soirée. Invite you to go check out that offering. It is open to the public now. Shares are available. If you've got further questions, don't hesitate to reach out. hello@joincommonwealth.com. Thanks for joining. Hopefully see you guys at the races, and good luck this weekend to all of our shareholders on Schoolyard Superman, who officially joins the road to the Kentucky Derby with this weekend's Withers Stakes. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.